Serena, let's move across to you. When it comes to rent and rent increases, can they proceed during COVID-19?
So the answer is no. So there's been new laws introduced, so they're COVID-19 laws, and that covers a period from the 29th of March for 6 months. So there's absolutely no rent increases, and they're retrospective. So if a tenant was served a rent increase prior to the COVID period, to take place within that COVID period from the 29th of March to the 29th of September, that notice is now null and void. So absolutely not. So what we'll do is we'll contact our landlords, in September, so that we're working in that market and have that conversation with them then, whether the market, needs an increase or they want to hold back for a few months, and we can revisit it again in a few months' time, just to sort of make sure we're working in the right market and the current market at the time. So if they do decide to go ahead with the rent increase, it still needs to be 60 days notice to the tenant, so the landlord won't see that money filter through until earliest December.
What about eviction? Can a tenant be evicted at this time?
Yes, they can, but there's been a ban on all notices. So all notices to vacate have been banned. So we don't have access to them at all. But there are circumstances that evictions can still take place. So they're situations that people can afford to pay rent and they've stopped paying rent. But if it can be proven that you can't pay rent due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they have to be able to supply us with a termination letter or hours cut, application to Centrelink, that sort of thing. So the tenant needs to be able to prove that they can't pay their rent. If that is proven correct, we can't evict them. So rule of thumb is if you're spending 30% or more of your income for rent, you're in financial distress, so you can't move them out. So look, we want to work closely with our tenants and landlords for the best result for everybody. That's what we want to do. Like, we don't want to see people being evicted from their homes. So we're working really closely with our clients, and it's going really well so far. Because we normally use that 30% rule anyway when we're putting tenants into our properties, we've had very few people in financial stress. So
people sitting at home tonight might be renting and they're thinking, do I have to agree to a rent reduction for it to actually come into effect? Is that the case or not?
Look, the government message has been very strong from the very beginning, and it is that they want us to negotiate between the landlord and the tenant for the best outcome for everybody. Yep. That's been loud and clear from the very start. So that's the best case scenario. And like I said, it's not just, oh, well, there's a pandemic, I can't pay my rent. You have to be able to show that. There's forms that are filled out along with those things like, your termination letter, like I suggested, the proof that you're paying more than 30% of your wage for rent, then it has to be lodged. So once it's agreed upon between the landlord and tenant, it's then lodged with the Consumer Affairs. Okay, so then the tenant can actually apply for like a one-off rent reduction, sort of not a rent reduction, I beg your pardon, a rent grant. So that's up to $2,000. So again, they have to prove all those things to be able to be eligible for that. So to be eligible, you need to have less than $5,000 savings. You need to be earning less than $1,903 per week and fall under all those things to be able to apply for that. We've had a few apply for it, but we haven't seen them come through yet. So those grants, if they're granted, they get paid to us to pay the rent on behalf of the tenant. So it doesn't go to the tenant, it comes to us to pay the landlord.